welcome back to Metals, Money, and Markets. We're at May 25th for MiningClips.com. I'm Rob Goodman, and as always, Mickey Fulp, the Mercenary Geologist, will break this down for us. Okay, Mickey, big drain on oil this week, some geopolitical ping pong with North Korea, a lot of news to go over. Let's get right into it here, where the metal's relatively flat, but in positive ground.
Yeah, the precious metals were up yesterday morning, especially gold, when Trump sent a letter to Kim after they called Pence stupid and ignorant, or words thereabouts. And so the supposed summit that was supposed to take place in 3 weeks is now being called off. My opinion, we're still negotiating, i.e. the art of the deal, but that was very good for gold. Went up to 1307 at its peak today before there was some profit taking and it dropped off, closed the week at 1300 for a 0.7% $8 gain. That 200-day moving average is probably magical here, and coincidentally that was at 1307, so it hit that and bounced right back down. Silver, 1646, gained a nickel. Platinum gained $16, almost 2%, to close at $8.99. And platinum was up $13 to close at $9.75.
And meanwhile, copper relatively flat here, picked up a penny.
Yeah, it had an up and down week, closed at 311. It remains in backwardation for 3 or 4 months going out. Does not look positive for the market, or it means that speculators think that copper's worth more now than it'll be in 3 months. We'll see if that's true. Yet another major bagged its participation, a pebble deposit. This is by counting, either 3 or 4 majors have quit that Alaska project. Basically, I think because it's not economic.
And shifting gears into energy here, reciprocated markets here, where oil was off big time this week.
Yeah, oil actually had a pretty strong week. I think it actually got up to $72 WTI. It had since drifted back down, but it got knocked to the ground today or last night when OPEC and Russia revealed they're having talks about increasing production by 1 million barrels a day, basically to offset what's going on with declines in Venezuela and Libya, two of the what I would characterize as rogue nations of the world. It finally took a breather, I think, is really what happened. Closed at 67.54, down more than 5%. A good $3 of that drop was today. Negative news, though, continues to pervade the oil patch. I mean, negative from supply-demand fundamentals. U.S. rigs up plus 13. U.S. production up 13 weeks in a row. Inventories came in much higher than were projected at 5.7 million barrels. And there are ongoing concerns about whether this U.S. export climb is sustainable. We don't have enough pipeline capacity and perhaps port capacity to increase much more than we have right now. This all ended up affecting the oil market, I think, and the catalyst was what came out of OPEC and Russia. Basically, in my opinion, oil moved up too far too fast, and so let's look at this as a pause, and we'll see where it goes next week.
And meanwhile, uranium had a pretty good week here as well.
Yeah, lots of positive news out of the uranium patch. Uranium is up now 5 weeks in a row, closed at 22.88 for a 3.5% gain. We haven't seen these levels since back in mid-January. Some very good news. New Jersey has agreed to bail out a couple of nuclear power plants that have CapEx issues or operating issues, let's say, financial issues. The DOE appropriation coming out of a Senate House subcommittee has funding in it for Portsmouth. And if you recall, that's where all this surplus DO uranium gets continually dumped on the market in the Obama administration. So if this bill passes the Senate and the House, that will end, which means the DOE won't drop about 5 million pounds of uranium on the spot market next year. Russia is discussing, the Russian Duma is discussing sanctions on the U.S. with uranium exports, and we get a significant amount of uranium for Russia every year. U.S. production in the Q1 hit a 70-year low. So let's do the math. That's 1948, Rob. And that was when we were prospecting for uranium in the Colorado Plateau with Geiger counters looking for petrified logs to build up U.S. uranium stocks to make nuclear bombs. So anyway, that is certainly of concern. And that all led to a higher uranium price.
And head over to the currency markets here, where the U.S. dollar continues to show strength that creeps above 94.
Yep, that's the high since mid-December, closed at 94.2 for another 0.5% gain. We are up considerably. We touched below 90 on the index no more than 6 weeks ago, so that's better than a 4% gain since that period of time. A lot of this has to do with weakness in the euro, bad economic news, and it dropped to below 117, rounded up, actually rounded down. It's about 116 for almost a percent gain. And finally, the loonie did not perform well with the U.S. dollar rise. It closed just a tad above 77 cents for 0.8% loss on the week.
And we're wrapping up the equities markets in the black, but relatively flat, the NASDAQ being the bigger winner here this week.
Yeah, the U.S. markets were up overall in the week, but the geopolitical jitters certainly put a damper on that today. Dow closed at 24,753, up 38 points on the week. S&P 500 gained 8 points to close at 27.21. NASDAQ had a good week, up 80 points, closed at 74.34 for a 1% gain. The VIX remains very low, less than 14 all week. Interest rates, based on a dovish Fed minutes that came out on Wednesday, drove the 10-year Treasury below 3%. So all in all, it was a pretty quiet week.
And wrapping up with the venture on the heels of a conference, red this week.
Short week on the venture exchange, and it remains weak. They had their equivalent Memorial Day on Monday, Queen Victoria Day. The specs, I think, are basically treading water. I certainly am, just basically on the sideline watching the market vacillate back and forth, close at 7.75%, percent and a half loss over the week, and the volumes were down considerably today. Not a lot of interest. We do not see that changing for the foreseeable future.
And of course, holiday week here, so appreciate the insight, Mickey. Enjoy your Memorial Day and to all the troops, and we'll catch up with you next week. Thanks for the insight.
Thanks a lot, Rob.